Good morning, everyone, and welcome to New York Metro Weather's special severe weather briefing on Hurricane Irene, which is now closing in on the outer banks of the North Carolina coast early this Saturday morning, August 27th, 2011. It's a little after 1 o'clock. We're looking at the Hurricane Irene 11 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. They have adjusted the forecast, actually the initial position, a little bit to the west as of 1 o'clock a.m. in a special advisory, but otherwise its forecast track remains the same. Hurricane warnings are in effect from the North Carolina coast all the way to Cape Cod, just south of Boston, including Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey beaches, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts coasts. Maximum sustained winds 100 miles an hour. The movement to the north-northeast at 13 miles an hour fits well into the forecast tracks for the forecast models, which we've been going over for a few days. A lot of things to be covered in this video, but we wanted to go over all of it. We've been going over it. This is our third video in the last 24 hours, but we want to keep you guys as updated as we can as we go along here. Here's the latest radar from the southeast United States, and you can see Hurricane Irene finally. We have a good radar representation of the system, and these are some very intense rain bands now making landfall, just getting into Norfolk, Virginia, Raleigh, Wilson, Jacksonville, and Wilmington are taking a beating right now. The storm system clearly heading pretty much northward. The forecasted advisory says north-northeast, so you can see some of that component in there as well. We zoom in on the radar and you can see this thing means business. Here is the center of the storm moving north to the north-northeast, as we said. Cape Hatteras located over here, so this storm may very well pass a little bit to the west of Cape Hatteras. Here comes a new update coming in right now. Also important to check out these little storms in here, these individual cells. Anytime you have a hurricane with such a spin and such a vigorous storm system, you can get isolated tornadoes, and we'll get into that a little bit later, as the Storm Prediction Center has actually issued a tornado watch all the way up to the Maryland beaches for the potential for isolated tornadoes in this storm system. But a very impressive radar representation of the hurricane right now off the southeast coast. Here's the satellite imagery, the infrared satellite. We have a satellite blackout in progress right now, but you can see the earlier frames as the storm system tries to get itself better organized. Irene had some issues earlier today with its organization as a result of shear and slight dry air entrainment. And you can see that working through the core of the system. The system was having some trouble getting organized, but over the last few hours it seems to be getting its act together slowly. The pressures have risen and dropped, fluctuating all day. No real strengthening or weakening, still a 100-mile-an-hour Category 2 hurricane. Here's another enhanced infrared satellite, really just to show you the vast size of the storm system, with the outflow extending back into the Tennessee Valley and all the way up even into New Jersey here at the top of your screen already. This was earlier this evening, actually. And the core of the system is not poorly organized. It really isn't. It's not as poorly organized as many would think. There are some problems with the outflow, but the inflow channels have improved, and you can see the center of the circulation with some deep convection forming over the center of the circulation. Here's the Storm Prediction Center tornado watch, which we were speaking of. You can see the initial radar and the tornado watch which followed. The tornado watch covers North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland beaches, cuts off at the Delaware state line, with the likelihood of isolated tornadoes, with very, very impressive low-level turning, low-level shear. Despite meager instability, the tornado threat could actually exist up the coast, and we may eventually see tornado watches up the New Jersey coast into Long Island as the storm system begins to track farther to the north, which it still is forecast to do. Here's tonight's 0Z NAM model, and you can see very impressive cyclone, which actually has trended a little bit to the west on tonight's forecast models. We go down and look at the pressure. If you remember from earlier this afternoon, the video that we showed you, this pressure was about 25 to 50 miles farther to the east. And now the models are beginning to shift back to the west a little bit. So this would be borderline landfall near Cape May. You can see the center of circulation here on the 10-meter winds, and very, very impressive winds both on the back side of the storm and the front side of the storm. Those are 40+ knot winds grazing Long Island at that time. You take a look at the loop here, you can see the storm system's approach as it comes through and cuts up near, up the Jersey shore and then straight into New York Harbor, 970 millibar low. Regardless of whether or not the winds are hurricane force, sustained, whatever they are. When you have a southeast wind howling into New York Harbor, significant storm surge, and significant amounts of rain, there are going to be some real problems. We'll zoom in again on the higher resolution NAM. And we wanted to take a step back for a second here, actually, and talk about the first bands of moderate to heavy tropical rainfall that will come through Saturday night into Sunday morning. These bands actually do have the chance to produce isolated severe weather with them. We'll go over some reasons why. These bands are extending out ahead of the low pressure system, so this is late Saturday night into Sunday morning, a band of very, very heavy rainfall. You can see advertised here. Notice that the center of the storm is still down south of Ocean City, Maryland on this model frame. And in this band, there's an increased amount of low-level turning, increasing helicity as this band is moving in. And you can see here on the SREF model that there is a small area of instability, 500 joules of surface cape, which actually could be enough to support the development of some strong thunderstorms with the potential to produce damaging wind gusts or maybe an isolated tornado. But really, the threat will continue to get worse and worse. After this band moves through, you can see the low pressure system now just east of Ocean City, Maryland at this time, and then by Sunday afternoon it's hugging the New Jersey coast. And this is truly a very bad position for a low pressure system to be in for the New York City Metro Area. As you can see, the winds are coming out of the southeast, 40 knots. These are probably hurricane force gusts at this time, and the system is drawing in a whole lot of water, a whole lot of storm surge, and this could be a pretty significant situation if you live along the New Jersey coast, if you live along the south shore of Long Island, and if you live anywhere near the coast in New York City. Here's the forecast rainfall amounts, which we were speaking of before. There is the storm surge problem, which we just covered. Then there is a flooding problem, and this carries even inland, where the winds might not be as strong, but you can see 10.9 inches of rain being forecasted by the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center. The soil moisture content is already very, very high. You add 10 to 11 inches of rain, or even on the lower side of the forecast, 8 to 10 inches of rain, whatever it may be, and you add tropical to hurricane force wind gusts into that, you could really have trees falling down. They're not going to, all of the trees in your neighborhood aren't going to fall down, but isolated to scattered trees down could be a real problem throughout the area, and that's how you start to get power outages. And you combine that with the flooding and the high astronomical tides. This is why we've been talking about the potential very, very high impacts that this storm system could have on our forecast area. One more time with the storm surge, we look at the storm surge exceedance. You can see the areas where the storm surge is expected to be highest. This is with those southeast winds that we're talking about coming off the water and having the effect bringing in all this water into our area, which is susceptible already to a storm surge in a storm like this, in a regular nor'easter. But this is a tropical system, it has a lot of water built up with it to begin with. We wanted to take one more look at the NAM here from earlier this evening to show you some the breakdown of the tropical cyclone as it comes up. You can see down here further to the south, the tropical system is much more confined, and as it gets up to the north, it begins to undergo what we call an extratropical transition, where the storm is still a hurricane, but it's transitioning into more of a cyclone, and you can see it losing the east end of its development. The winds are going to shift more towards the east side, the precipitation towards the west side, but as a whole, the radius of winds, the area, the width of the expansive, the winds, the area to which you will see tropical storm and hurricane force winds is going to expand greatly at this time. So you could see tropical storm force wind gusts 250 to 300 miles away from the center of the storm system. I believe earlier this evening the tropical storm force winds extended 290 miles away from the center at one point. So this will expand greater as the storm transitions extratropical, and the hurricane force wind gusts will expand as well. So it's important not to focus exactly on whether you're just to the east or just to the west of the forecast track of the storm. Whenever you have what's forecast to be a Category 1 hurricane tracking up the New Jersey coast and into western Long Island, you're going to have very significant impacts in our area. And it's important also to remember, hurricanes don't come around here too often, and that's why it's important for us to prepare adequately. It's better safe than sorry. Panicking is one extreme way to go, and we don't recommend that. It's not time to panic, it's time to prepare. But it's also not time to say, oh, this storm is weakening and it's being overhyped. That's the complete opposite extreme. You need to prepare adequately in case the worst case scenario does occur. It may not occur. You may not have a tree fall on your house. You may not have flooding come into your basement. You may not have a storm surge bring waves down your street. But our area is very susceptible to such things where we have, like we talked about already, moist soil content. A lot of residents in our area live below sea level. We live near the area beaches right where this Category 1 hurricane is forecast to track. And 10 inches of rainfall on top of it with hurricane wind gusts, it could just be a very, very bad situation. And no one really is in the state to say that they know it won't be that way, because quite frankly, we haven't had a storm like this in a good decade. So that's the message we're really trying to send to you guys, that it's time to prepare adequately. You need to have your preparations done by around noon on Sunday, because noon on Saturday, because by Saturday afternoon and evening, that's when the first bands with potential for thunderstorms will be getting into here. We have to hit up the evacuations real quick. Here are the New York City zones. We're going to have to scroll back and forth with these. The orange areas are Zone A areas, which are under a mandatory evacuation. Coney Island, the Rockaways, Jamaica Bay, low-lying areas of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Richmond County, Staten Island. If you live in a Zone A area, you are under a mandatory evacuation. So if you do not evacuate, you will be essentially on your own during this storm system. And also, I believe, I'm not 100% sure if this is correct, but the city will either fine or arrest anyone who is found outside in a mandatory evacuation area after tomorrow evening. And also important to also note, mandatory evacuation of Long Beach Island in New Jersey, Fire Island in New York, Cape May County, Atlantic County, New Jersey, and our friends down in Ocean City, Maryland as well. The Garden State Parkway will be closed southbound south of exit 98 all of tomorrow. I believe that closed earlier tonight. So do not try to travel in that direction at all, period. They do not want you traveling in that way. And tolls will be lifted on evacuation routes in the Garden State Parkway and major highways there, so that you may leave the area without any trouble. So know your storm surge areas. We've tried to cover them as best as we can. Know your evacuation routes and your plans. This is really it, folks. I mean, within 12 hours or so, maybe a little later than that, we'll begin to see the outer bands of Irene start to get into the area. So be ready, have your hurricane plan ready, and stick with us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, interact with us, ask us questions, give us your opinion. We're here to answer, we're here to interact with you. That's what we're here for. Here in the office, I mean, we're working 24-hour shifts right now, and we'll be around until Hurricane Irene has passed and skies are clear. And we'll probably be working after that to go through whatever reports we've gotten and whatever needs to be covered and dealt with after that. Also, with the storm approaching, we need your reports. We really desperately do. We need to pretty much beg you guys for this. We need pictures, we need reports, we need accounts, damage reports and assessments, whatever you guys can give us as the storm begins to occur. We need it. We really appreciate it so greatly. We love interacting with you guys. So this is the time when we really need to work together. So we'll be here on Facebook and Twitter, and we'll be giving you another video update probably by 8 or 9 o'clock on Saturday morning as Hurricane Irene begins to make its final approach up the East Coast towards the area. We'll talk to you guys soon.